The major issue of this campaign is the direct political, personal, and moral responsibility of Democratic Party leadership in the White House and in the Congress for this unprecedented calamity which has befallen us.
The Congress will push me to raise taxes, and I'll say no, and they'll push and I'll say no, and they'll push again and I'll say to them, read my lips. No new taxes.
When I put my hand on the Bible, I will swear to not only uphold the laws of our land, I will swear to uphold the honor and dignity of the office to which I have been elected, so help me God.
3 successful Republican nominees, their speeches can Mitt Romney meet that standard. One of the things we're going to discuss on our roundtable, joined by George Will, Congresswoman Donna Edwards of Maryland, Greta Van Susteren of Fox News, Republican strategist Mary Matalin was there with George Bush back in 1988. That's right. And Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm, now with Current Television. Thanks for coming on. Current TV, excuse me. And George, I do want to get to the convention, but let's begin with this whole controversy, which began about a week ago on St. Louis television. Congressman Todd Akin, now the Republican Senate candidate in Missouri, despite the wishes of the entire Republican establishment. How big a blow is this to the party?
Well, it's considerable. Part of the path to Republican control of the Senate ran through Missouri. There's still a path, but it gets more difficult if he remains the nominee. I'm not convinced that that's the case when he realizes how little money he'll have. But it does complicate putting the hands of all Senate gavels, committee gavels, in Republican hands. And the strange thing about this, George, is abortion is an issue that the judiciary took custody of with Roe v. Wade in '73. And on the 3 issues that the political system can deal with, parental notification of abortions for minors, public funding, and late-term abortions, the country is overwhelmingly with the Republican side.
Jennifer?
Well, except that now you've got a Republican, you've had a Republican Party platform that embraces this human life amendment. Post Todd Akin, the Republicans knew that this would be an issue. They had several days to address it and to make it clear in the platform that there would be exceptions for rape and incest, and yet they chose not to. So now Romney's in the position of having to distance himself from his own platform, and it gets to the issue, the fundamental issue is, what kind of leader is he? Is he going to embrace what the Republican Party is all about, or is he going to flee from it? Choosing Ryan, I think, was his answer.
He mostly wants it to go away, Mary Matalin. Yes. And we're seeing Todd Akin, George thinks he might get out. I got that same sense when I interviewed the congressman this week, but since then he's dug in a couple of times. We have a new poll out this morning. He's now down 9 points to Claire McCaskill in Missouri, a race he was winning.
George, he maybe dug in, but he's not going to have a shovel to continue digging because he's not going to have any money. George Will is right. We need to win Missouri. We're going to win Missouri, and Wagner's going to end up being our candidate. The party's going to get Ann Wagner in. And
so you're just convinced he's going to get out?
Or we'll run a third party. We'll run a write-in. We can do it. We have the money to do it. We're going to transfer the money. It's not as easy as, but it's a good state for Romney, and we will get it back. What this Akin thing has done is turn it's not going to affect our convention. We've had that platform forever. We think that abortion is a tragedy for the woman. We revere the sanctity of life. But they have turned their convention into an anti-Akin thing, which should be concerning to you, since a third of your members identify themselves as pro-life.
That's not the point.
And a half of independents identify themselves as pro-life. 50% of Americans identify themselves as pro-life. This is not going to be. But
70% of them would like to see an exception for rape or incest, and that's the issue.
Is there a danger, though, Congresswoman, in the Democrats seeming to focus on this to the exclusion of the economy?
Well, I think it's actually a broader question. I think Republicans want to pretend that Todd Akin is an aberration, but in fact, it's their party platform. It's consistent with an agenda that they've had that's actually not been supportive of women, whether you're talking about abortion or contraception, family planning, or a woman's health. And so I think Republicans want to run away from Akin, but they actually can't run away from a platform and a party represented by Paul Ryan at the top of their ticket that has not been supportive of women in any case.
And Greta, one of the things we're seeing is you have Democratic Senate candidates in other states, like Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, running ads about AKIN.
Yes, I mean, and of course, Senator McCaskill should be sending a fruit basket to Congressman AKIN every single day, but because what has
she
happened,
wanted him in the race. There's no
she wants him in the race,
that.
and what has happened is, they've had the Republican Party has that horrible gender gap, and all those women who are sort of on the edge. Now the Democratic Party has incredible ammunition against the Republican for those undecided women who think like, wait, legitimate rape? What's that? I mean, that's the danger, is that gender gap. And you shake your head no at me.
You know why I'm shaking my head? Because the Democratic gender gap with men is as great as the gender gap with women. And
but
after
you'd like to peel off some more.
No,
you don't want to
after
push
a
them over.
sustained war on women that Romney's everything from a dog abuser to a wife cancer giver to a felon to a tax cheat, multi-million dollars, multifaceted, multi-state, the gender gap has remained stable. And as has Obama's with men. We're doing fine with women, though. What's driving the gender gap for Obama, excuse me, 1 second, is liberal women under 30.
Mostly unmarried.
And postgraduate women. Romney wins every other woman, middle class, moms, suburbans. Those are the women who are going to vote. The enthusiasm among younger people, in particularly, I don't know about postgraduate, that's not enough to overcome the women that Romney are going to win. And this war on women is ridiculous. Do you really think that Republicans who are married and have daughters and have sisters don't care about women's health or are going to ban contraception?
Well, I think there's been a consistent agenda. There's been a pretty consistent agenda, both with Republicans in Congress and with this ticket, that is not supportive of women. All you have to do is look at proposals to defund Planned Parenthood and a nominee in Mitt Romney who says that he would do that.
Defunding doesn't mean you're against women.
Women's family planning, which is really important to women and to families. And this is a Republican ticket that actually has said in the face of its policies, it isn't just about its words that, don't match science and don't match biology, but in a policy agenda that actually does not support women in the kinds of things that are important to them.
Let's go back to the genesis of the so-called war on women. It was Sandra Fluke. And
Georgetown University student.
Georgetown University student, a 30-year-old university student, that is someone halfway almost to being eligible to collect Social Security at age 62, whose complaint was that a Catholic university was not being compelled to pay for her contraception. That's the entire contraception issue in this campaign, and the genesis of the so-called war on women.
I totally disagree. The Guttmacher Institute has canvassed the number of anti-choice laws that have been introduced and passed in states since 2010, when the Tea Party and the Republicans took control of many states. 40 bills passed passed this year, 92 last year, a record number. You cannot say that there is not activity at the states that has bubbled up that allows women to say, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I mean, you had Bob McDonnell on there, Governor McDonnell, who's also known as the transvaginal probe governor. How intrusive do the states have to be against women for women not to feel like they are under assault?
We're at a crossroads in history. We are making a decision, a big decision in this election. Progress is certain, change is certain, progress is not. Do we want to go on the continued path of decline, or do we want progress? Do you really think that women, in their duty to posterity, would secure contraception and abortifacient rights for themselves, as opposed to progress and prosperity for the future? I think highly
I think women feel more urgently about the economy, first and foremost. And I think that the sort of war on women has sort of been sort of a catchy thing that the Democrats have used, that there's assault on women. But a lot of women don't feel like the Republicans are out there to try to kill them. That war on women's a little bit dramatic. There is a discussion about abortion rights. The Supreme Court has spoken on it, and there's going to continue to be discussion forever. But this sort of war on women is a little more dramatic. And the more urgent issue is the economy, and do you have a job? Can you make a living? Put food on the table?
Sir, let me broaden out the conversation a little bit. Generally on the convention, Democrats are saying, George Will, that Mitt Romney needs to reinvent himself coming into this. They're saying he needs a do-over. What, in your view, what do you think he does need to do? What does he need to fix? He is coming underwater on personal favorability into this convention.
Usually, George, with most politicians, the problem is their inauthenticity. His problem is that he's authentically what he is. He spent his formative years in the Middle West in the middle of the last century. He's a child of the 1950s. I speak as one myself, from both places in time and geography. He has the reticence of someone raised by the people who were raised by the Depression and the war. He has a low emotional metabolism. That's who he is. He can't turn to the country and say, I feel your pain, because the pain isn't his, it's other people's. What he can say is, I can fix your pain. And that should be good enough unless we're electing a talk show host.
And Mary Matalin, he does say, Mitt Romney's telling the Wall Street Journal, he's not going to lie down and let it all out. He's not going to have a version of This Is Your Life. But how much of that does he need to do? And I want to show a little bit of how President Clinton dealt with his personal issues back in the 1992 campaign.
I never met my father. He was killed in a car wreck on a rainy road 3 months before I was born. After that, my mother had to support us. So we lived with my grandparents. She endured that pain because she knew her sacrifice was the only way she could support me and give me a better life.
I take George's point about reticence, but it was those details that actually helped voters come to trust Bill Clinton, put even some of the negative things they thought about him in context.
He was in third place going into that convention, and your polling showed at the time that nobody knew who was the man from Hope. That's what he was doing now. The problem facing the country today, it's not Mitt Romney's personality, it's the problems facing the country today. What Mitt Romney needs to do is to show that personality and why it is and what informed him, but talk about his remarkable private sector and political career. He's been nothing but a success. He's a problem solver. And with the combination of Ryan on the ticket, they will be solving these economic problems, the essence of which is our debt problem that's been proved to be successful in history. That's what he has to do. Who is he? What is a presidency, a Romney-Ryan presidency going to look like? And why is it substantially superior to what's happening to now?
Yeah, so the reason why Romney is bringing in all of these madmen, the Madison Avenue executives, is because they do want to bathe him in warmth and sort of create a human connection. But I completely agree with you that the pain is not his. And that's part of his problem, is that he cannot relate to what real people out there are facing. Yes, he can claim to be a problem solver, and the question is, does he have the solutions, or is he part of the problem? But wait a second, just 1 second. I think that the challenge for him is that personally he has never faced some sort of crucible that he's had to overcome. And people love that story that Bill Clinton has to face.
No. With MS, with 5 kids, a problem child. He's had lots of personal problems, Governor.
I don't know about the problem child
issue, but clearly, about it in an interview.
But clearly, obviously, Ann Romney having issues like that clearly is a challenge, and I'm sure that they're going to talk about that. But overall, he hasn't had to pull himself up by his bootstraps, that sort of crucible, and they've got to make him human.
Governor, in a very sort of practical sense, is that the flip side is that President Obama has now had almost 4 years. And frankly, if you aren't better off, we know his economic strategy. And if you don't think it worked, if it didn't make your life better, it doesn't matter whether you find someone sort of warm and fuzzy that you like. You're like, okay, well, let's try something else.
Yeah, no,
let's change.
That's one of the things you're seeing in a lot of the Republican tone. I think you'll see more of it this week, kind of a more sorrow than an anger tone, giving people permission. We know you like President Obama. You may have even voted for him, but he didn't get the job done.
I think that's condescending. He's a nice guy. He means well. He just doesn't know what he's doing. It's a pat in the head. I actually think
will it work?
I think that's condescending.
I think it's very condescending, too. But I think that the problem that Mitt Romney has is that people actually, the things that people know about Mitt Romney, they don't like. They don't like the fact that on a policy level, not whether they like him personally, on a policy level, he's going to cut Medicare benefits. On a policy level, he's a person who doesn't understand people's lives and would rather provide tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires than tax breaks for people who make under $250,000 in middle-income Americans. The problem is the problem is a policy agenda from Mitt Romney that is saying to middle-class families, sorry, but you're on your own. People are rejecting that about Mitt Romney, and I think that's the problem he has in defining himself going into the convention.
I want to stay on the general critique of President Obama and the Democrats. You guys seem to agree that it's condescending to do the more sorrow than an anger. I want to show first
to pat him on the head and say, well, you mean well. I mean, you can't do your job, but you mean well.
Here was 2008, the case against President Obama at the Republican convention.
We need a president who understands the lessons of September the 11th, 2001. The man we need is John McCain.
My friends, eloquence is no substitute for a record, not in these tough times for America.
Not a personal attack, a statement of fact.
Barack Obama has never led anything. Nothing. Nada.
And I guess, George, well, this time we're going to hear because of that lack of experience, he couldn't do what he needed to do as president.
You mean on the economy?
Yeah.
Well, yes, whatever you can say, whatever reason he didn't. In July, George, in 44 of the 50 states, the unemployment rate went up. Just the other day, we were told that median household income has declined 4.8% during the recovery. It has declined almost twice as much during the recovery as it did during the recession. Now, this is failure writ large in statistics.
And with those kind of numbers, Jennifer Granholm, is it possible, you know, the theory of the Republican Romney campaign is that, you know, voters are just waiting to see Mitt Romney at the convention, at the debates, but with the wrong track numbers where they are, with the approval of President Obama where it is, everything is going to break against the president at the end?
Well, I think that when people are aware of the solutions that Mitt Romney's putting out, which are the same solutions we tried under George Bush, I don't know how we can continue to do this trickle-down business and expect it's going to provide different results. That solution is not what's going to bring the economy forward. And the fact is that the president has put solutions on the table in front of a Congress where members have signed pledges essentially not to cooperate with him. So who's to blame for that? Mitt Romney's put a guy in Congress who's been in charge of the obstruction of Congress. So the president can point to them and say, they are not the solution. They have caused the problem.
There are two things you always hear, Mary Matalin, from the president and Democrats right now. It's the Romney-Ryan plan and the word middle class.
Thank God. You know, Democrats are chronic data deniers. George Bush had 52 consecutive months of growth. This president's had 42 consecutive months of no growth.
No,
unless you consider
1.5% 29 months of growth. I mean,
we have over 8% unemployment.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that up. I mean, look where we started with under him. I'm just saying.
You were governor. If you had an 8%, perpetual 8% unemployment when he promised 14, when he promised half of that, when he promised to cut the deficit in half, we've had 4 consecutive years of over $1 trillion deficits. And it's not his experience or lack thereof. It's his policies. In the 17 states that Republicans were elected in the midterms, those states are growing their economies and growing jobs at twice the rate this president's economy is. The stimulus is neither timely targeted, effective, or temporary. The cap and trade went nowhere. He had his own Congress, the majority. He enjoyed both chambers for 2 years. He got everything he wanted. He has not grown the economy. He's not expanded any growth, and he has cut Medicare for current seniors and the Ryan plan exempts.
It's just not true.
You can't make up the facts. I mean, we've had 29 straight months of consecutive job growth in the private sector. The president has stabilized the economy. The president has put on the table $2 trillion worth of cuts to our deficits. Meanwhile, Republicans in the Congress have actually posed a barrier to this president, and you can't ignore that. And the fact is that on Medicare, I mean, the president added benefits, closed the donut loophole, and also cut waste and fraud in the Medicare system. Republicans just aren't telling the truth, and the fact is that the truth matters when it comes to Medicare.
Yeah, well, everyone knows there's a problem with Medicare. Every single person knows it's just not sustainable. And the one thing is what I think the American people want, if I can be so bold as to speak for the American people, is they want some ideas. They don't want just sort of be told like, oh, it's going to be okay. They don't want the talk. And I think while some may worry about cuts in the future, at least they want to see something is being done, a program out there. I don't know if Paul Ryan's got the best program out there, but he's got one on the table.
Well, he doesn't have a good program for seniors. For seniors who would see immediate cuts in their benefits.
55 and up.
Under the Ryan plan, current seniors would see immediate cuts in their benefits. That donut hole, they'd be paying out of their pocket for prescription drugs again. People like me, I'm 54 years old. I would be on a pathway to try to save $59,000 for my retirement because we turned Medicare into a voucher program. That's like providing green stamps for Medicare and then say make up the difference with $6,300 out of your pocket.
I think people, I travel across the country a lot. And they hear a lot of this blaming and criticism. They'd just like to see some good programs on the table to consider. And that's what I think that they're not feeling. It's like, you know, we got all the talk. We've heard it. We've heard all the numbers. And that might be what a lot of the independent voters are going for. But, George, I have been struck by how the Romney campaign has been going on the offense on Medicare coming into this convention. You think that's a wise move?
I do. First of all, I don't think they have any choice, having embraced the Ryan plan. Second, the American people know that this is unsustainable. They know that Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney won't end Medicare as we know it. Arithmetic is going to do that. And therefore, they have to communicate certain elementary facts that I don't think have permeated this panel completely. One is the Ryan plan goes into effect in 2023. You'll be what, 64, 65. Second, it only affects those above 55, and those above 55 under the new Ryan plan, which he changed in consultation with Senator Wyden of Oregon, you have a choice. If you love Medicare, stay with it.
Well, but George, under the Romney-Ryan plan, now that the $700 billion in Medicare cuts that were part of President Obama's health care plan are going to be, according to Governor Romney, reinstated, that's where they get part of the argument, Jennifer Granholm, that costs will go up for seniors right away because of the putting that money back into the hospitals.
The Obama administration extended the life of Medicare sustainability by 8 years. Romney saying he's going to take that money away would actually shorten the life of Medicare. And one of the things, one of the plans, and I think you're right, Greta, about solutions, and I think you're right that people know things are not sustainable. But one of the things that the Obama administration is doing is rewarding providers for outcomes rather than paying on a fee-for-service basis. That is going to be a change in the program that doesn't deny benefits, that takes away excessive payments from insurance providers.
One of the things, though, one of the arguments that he has to worry about is that if his numbers are so good there, why didn't his stimulus number idea work so well? I mean, that's one of the problems that he has. In order to sell us on some big change economically, he's got to at least have a little bit of a production record. And that stimulus bill, we all hoped that it would be like, we all wanted the economy to go well. It just didn't quite work out that well.
Yeah, unfortunately, too much of the stimulus was put into tax cuts that people did not see. And
but that's
if that
his
had
leadership. That's his job.
I mean, it was part of the compromise that he worked out with Congress in order to get a couple of Republican votes. That was an expensive buy, but that's what happened. But truly, and the difficult thing for the Obama administration is arguing a negative. If there were no stimulus, what would the economy look like? We were losing 750,000 jobs a month.
It was a huge drag on the economy because it took money out of the private sector and put it in the public sector, which was the only sector that didn't do as poorly as
a third of it was tax cuts that went into the private sector.
Did you support President Clinton? I think you probably did, and you probably did too. The essence of the radical Ryan Medicare reform is premium support, which was an Alice Rivlin, Bill Clinton, Obama supported Erskine Bull's debt commission idea. It's hardly radical. It inspires.
I want to move on one more. The ultimate irony of premium support is it's a backdoor, surreptitious way to begin mean testing entitlement programs, that is, to make the rich play more. Is making it more progressive.
A lot of talk here about Paul Ryan. He's going to be probably the second most watched speech of this convention. And a lot of questions about what he needs to do. So far, hasn't seemed to make much difference to the ticket, at least in the polling I've seen so far. But I want to take a look at 4 years ago again and watch what Sarah Palin, who really had a breakout moment at the convention, talked about.
I had the privilege of living most of my life in a small town. I was just your average hockey mom and signed up for the PTA. I love those hockey moms. You know, they say the difference between a hockey mom and a pit bull? Lipstick.
George, I expect we're going to see something of a different kind of speech out of Paul Ryan. But what does he have to do? There have been some questions about, does he look and feel too young? Clearly a lot of discussion about his plan. He's got to defend that, but also has to become Mitt Romney's chief character witness.
Well, he's 28 years younger than Joe Biden. He's the same age Dan Quayle was. He's 2 years older than Richard Nixon was when picked in '52. He is young, and he ought to talk to young people. The Pew Foundation says that 25% of young people between 18 and 34 have moved back in with their parents. Unemployment in July among 18 to 29-year-olds was 12.7%. That's above Nevada, which is the worst of the 50 states. This is a cohort that Obama carried by 34 points last time, and he won't do it again this time. If Romney-Ryan ticket makes the case that they are suffering disproportionately.
I'm not sure the young people will flip, but there's no question, Congresswoman, that the young people right now say they're staying home.
Well, I think we always have a challenge of getting that cohort actually out to vote, and the president did a good job of that in 2008, and I think it's, you know, part of the plan this time to make sure that young people do vote. And there's a lot at stake for young people in this election. It's true, many of them have moved back home with their parents, but they're also drowning under a sea of college loan debt, and they see that President Obama has actually been the one to put forward a plan for college students not to have to drown under that debt, not to continue to pay the excessive interest rates that they were paying, to continue to receive Pell Grant student loans and those sort of things to go to college. There's a lot at stake for young people in this election, and I think that President Obama can make the appeal to them.
George, what were you pulling out there? What was that?
You young people, all 5 of you, don't have one of these yet. This is a Medicare card, which I got 6 years ago. I showed it to my doctor. He said, "That's wonderful, George. Now we'll send your bills to your children." Now, that's a funny way to run the state.
Is that the case that Paul Ryan makes?
Absolutely. It's intergenerational theft. Let me tell you about Paul Ryan. He has the earnestness and the enthusiasm and the vigor of a young person, but he has, my mother, Midwesterners used to say, an old soul, which means you're wise and you're responsible. His daddy died in high school. He had to grow up fast. He's always been a wise old soul. So he does project maturity. He's an intellectual epicenter of the House. He is the only one with ideas on the table, and he has done a lot for the ticket. He has done half the job that Romney would have to do at the convention, which is unite and enthuse the base. They are ecstatic.
And let me be flip, as hailing from the state of Wisconsin, is President Obama is from Illinois, the Chicago Bears, and as he won Wisconsin by 14 points in 2008. All that Paul Ryan needs to do is say, I'm a Green Bay Packer fan, I'm a shareholder, and he carries Wisconsin.
One word on Paul Ryan, then I want to turn to
Yeah, I was just going to say the young vote is incredibly important, but the fact that many states are taking steps now to curb the ability of people to show up at the polls, making ID required, not allowing, college ID to be able to have access to a ballot, that makes it more difficult. It's a very smart, shrewd move on the part of Republicans to carve out the types of people who you think are going to vote for the other side. But it certainly makes an organizing issue for Democrats.
George, we have to move on. Just a couple minutes left. A word about Neil Armstrong.
Well, another Midwesterner, another reticent man who stepped on the moon and said, "One small step for mankind," or a large step for mankind. Again, he was a representative of an America that felt different in the sense that Jack Kennedy could say, "Let's go to the moon by the end of the decade." And we went to the moon by the end of the decade. A country that was felt capable of doing big things and wants to feel that way again.
One of the most fascinating things I read this morning, Jennifer Granholm, was the idea from his former wife that he felt guilty that he got all that attention because over an effort that was tens of thousands of people were part of.
Well, it tells you what a humble man he was. And that humble man also was a huge advocate for thinking big, even though he felt he was a small part of something big. And I think thinking big requires big vision and the ability to pool our collective will and resources to invest in the things that will allow us to invest in NASA, to invest in space exploration, to invest in the things that make us great.
Or to be inspired by yourself, because what he did to a generation, including girls, he was an early feminist, he gave you the sense that in America, if you had the drive and the dream, you could be anything you wanted to be. I grew up wanting to be an astronaut as a girl. That's the difference between conservatives and liberals. We think we can do it.
I want to be.
We think we build it.
30 seconds, Greta.
It was so exciting. Everybody wanted to do it. Everybody was in on the game to get to the moon. It was so exciting. We were all in on it. The media was in on it. Then Speaker Gingrich says something about going to the moon, and everyone laughed, and everyone thought it was ridiculous, and he got belittled. What happened to the fun attitude? Let's sort of try it. I know everyone's going to scream at me for supporting Newt Gingrich on this issue, but inspiration is really fun.
From Neil Armstrong to Newt Gingrich, that is going to have to be the last word today. Thank you all very much. And the conversation continues online. Governor Granholm is going to answer your questions today on Twitter at Jennifer Granholm. Just use the hashtag #thisweek.